Imagine for a moment that there is no city. There are no roads, no maps, no names for places. There is no written history because no one has invented writing yet. There is only cold, hunger, and the need to survive. We are about 20,000 years ago, in the far northeast of the Asian continent. A group of human beings, maybe 30, maybe 50 people, moves slowly eastward, following herds of animals they themselves don't fully understand. They don't know that they are about to do something no human being has ever done before. They are going to discover an entirely new world. They will be the first humans to set foot in what we now call America. This is their story. And it is, without a doubt, one of the most incredible journeys humanity has ever made. To understand why they crossed, you first have to understand where they came from. These first Americans were descendants of groups that had migrated from Africa tens of thousands of years earlier, crossing Central Asia and eventually reaching Siberia. They were hunter-gatherers. They didn't farm the land or raise animals. Their survival depended entirely on what nature offered them each day. The world they lived in was radically different from today. The planet was in the midst of the last glaciation, the coldest period of the last 100,000 years. Global temperatures were between 6 and 8 degrees lower than they are now. Huge ice sheets covered much of the northern hemisphere. The analysis of ancient DNA recovered from bones in Siberia and Alaska indicates that these populations were genetically isolated for between 15,000 and 20,000 years before crossing into America. They went through entire generations without mixing with other human groups. And it was precisely that extreme cold that made the crossing possible. As so much water froze in the glaciers, the sea level dropped more than 100 meters. This exposed a strip of land nearly 1,500 kilometers wide between Siberia and what is now Alaska. Scientists call it Beringia. But be careful, they didn't see a bridge between continents. For them, it was simply land. Cold, windy steppe, and surprisingly inhabited by animals. They didn't cross in one leap. They lived there, in Beringia, for perhaps thousands of years. Beringia wasn't an ice desert. It was a cold, dry steppe, but surprisingly fertile compared to the glaciers around it. Winds from the Pacific brought some moisture. Grasses, mosses, and low shrubs grew there. And where there were plants, there were herbivores. And where there were herbivores, there were reasons to stay. Paleobotanical studies of the seabed in the Bering Sea found preserved pollen that shows the presence of dwarf birches, Arctic willows, and various grasses in Beringia. It wasn't barren tundra, but a cold prairie capable of supporting large mammals. The animals that roamed that region were spectacular: woolly mammoths up to 4 meters tall at the shoulder, woolly rhinos, bison with enormous horns, wild horses, and the terrifying cave lion, a feline 30% larger than the modern African lion. For humans of that time, these animals were not just danger, they were food, clothing, tools, and shelter. Everything they needed to survive came from them. That's how the crossing began. It wasn't a conscious decision to explore a new continent. It was the result of following the animals. Generation after generation, moving a few more kilometers eastward, not knowing that on the other side there was a world that no human had ever seen. What did they look like? The analysis of skeletal remains and ancient DNA allows us to know this quite precisely. They were short to medium in height, with sturdy bodies adapted to the cold. They had typically mongoloid features, prominent cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes with an epicanthic fold, straight dark hair. But perhaps the most impressive thing wasn't their appearance, but their mind. These were not primitive humans. They were fully modern Homo sapiens, with the same brain capacity as us. They had complex language, rituals, oral historical memory, and practical intelligence to survive in conditions that would kill most of us in days. At the Yana RHS site, in northern Siberia, dated to 32,000 years ago, mammoth ivory tools and decorative ornaments were found, showing that these populations had art and symbolism long before crossing into America. They lived in small groups, between 20 and 50 people. Probably organized by kinship, extended families with an elder man or woman respected as an authority figure. Important decisions, when to move, where to go, how to face a predator, were made collectively, around the fire. And the fire was sacred. Not in a metaphorical sense, it was literally the most valuable thing they had. Losing the fire in those temperatures meant, simply, dying. What were they wearing? This is one of the questions that fascinates us the most, and archaeology has surprisingly detailed answers. Their clothes were a work of engineering. Multiple layers of skin, with the fur facing inward on the inner layer to trap body heat, and tanned leather outward on the outer layer to repel wind and snow. This principle is exactly the same as what modern technical mountain jackets use today. Analysis of human clothing lice indicates that complex cold weather clothing, requiring stitching and layers, appeared between 83,000 and 170,000 years ago. By the time of the American crossing, they had been perfecting this technology for tens of thousands of years. They sewed with bone or mammoth ivory needles, using animal tendons as thread. The needles found at Siberian sites from this period have a perfectly drilled eye less than a millimeter in diameter. An impressive technical feat without metal or mechanical tools. Their boots were waterproof, made with several layers, a thick leather sole, a middle layer of grass or moss as insulation, and an outer layer of fur. The same basic design used today by the indigenous peoples of the Canadian Arctic. They also wore hats, mittens, and face protectors. In temperatures of 30 or 40 degrees below zero, common in that region, leaving any part of the skin exposed for more than a few minutes could mean irreversible frostbite. Sewing needles dating from 20,000 to 30,000 years ago were found at sites around Lake Baikal in Siberia, practically identical in design to current Inuit needles. Arctic sewing technology hasn't really changed in essence for 20,000 years. The diet was brutal but effective. Meat was the cornerstone of their nutrition, especially in winter. A single adult mammoth could provide hundreds of kilos of meat, fat, essential to survive the cold, bones for tools, and tendons for sewing. When they hunted one, it was an event that could feed the group for weeks. But it wasn't all about mammoths. They also hunted reindeer, bison, wild horses, and birds. In coastal areas or near rivers, they fished for salmon and collected shellfish. In summer and fall, they gathered berries, roots, mushrooms, and bird eggs. Isotopic analysis of human bone remains from late Pleistocene Siberia shows a diet consisting of between 70 and 85% animal protein. The nitrogen, 15 values are similar to those of wolves and other top carnivores in the ecosystem. Animal fat was just as important as protein. In extreme temperatures, the human body burns calories at an astonishing rate. An active person in the Arctic might need between 4,000 and 5,000 calories a day, double that of a sedentary person in a mild climate. Mammoth, bear, or seal fat was literally fuel for survival. They also preserved food, they buried frozen meat, dried it in the wind, and in some cases fermented it. The Siberian permafrost acted as a natural refrigerator. Archaeological sites have found bone deposits that seem like deliberately buried pantries. Let's not be naive, this journey was deadly. Not metaphorically. Literally, at every step. The cold was the #1 enemy. An Arctic storm can drop the apparent temperature to -50 degrees with the wind chill. A well-fed adult man can die of hypothermia in less than 2 hours exposed to those conditions without shelter. A child, in much less time. Predators were the second danger. The territory they were crossing was home to the cave bear, bigger than the current grizzly bear, the giant wolf, and the already mentioned cave lion. Without firearms, without metal, with only hardened wooden spears and stone tips, facing these animals was a life-or-death gamble. The cave bear weighed between 400 and 1,000 kilograms. However, bone collagen analysis suggests it was mostly vegetarian or omnivorous. The brown bear, smaller but more aggressive and carnivorous, was probably the more dangerous of the two. There was also the risk of falling into ice crevasses hidden under the snow, of crossing rivers during thaw, of losing your bearings in a total whiteout snowstorm, where the horizon disappears and the sky and land merge. Modern Inuit call this phenomenon a whiteout, and they know that in it, it's easy to walk in circles until you die from exhaustion. And still, they crossed. Not because they weren't afraid, but because fear had been part of their everyday life since they were born. They were raised in danger. Danger was simply the price of existing. How did they understand the world? This is what we can least know for sure, and what fascinates us the most. We don't have their words. We don't have their myths. But we do have their traces. We know they had burial rituals. They buried their dead with red ochre, a mineral that seems to symbolize blood or life in almost all Paleolithic cultures around the world, and with personal belongings. This implies that they believed in some form of life after death, or at least in a spiritual beyond for the deceased. The Sungir grave, in Russia, dated to 34,000 years ago, contains the remains of an adult and 2 children buried with over 13,000 mammoth ivory beads sewn onto their clothing. The work to produce those beads is estimated at 10,000 hours of human labor. This implies social hierarchy and the accumulation of value. Nomadism wasn't chaos. It was a perfectly organized system. They knew the land like we know our city. They knew where rivers spring in the spring, which routes herds take in the fall, which hills offer shelter from the north wind. This knowledge was passed down orally from generation to generation with extraordinary accuracy. They thought in terms of the group, not the individual. The survival of the family or tribe was the absolute priority. An elder who could no longer keep up with the march was a real burden, but also the group's living library, the person who remembered where to find water 20 winters ago, which plant heals an infected wound. Abandoning them meant losing irreplaceable information. How do we know all this? Archaeology and modern genetics have been incredibly generous with data over the past 30 years. In southern Chile, the Monte Verde site, dated to 14,500 years ago, preserved under a layer of peat stone tools, wood remains, and even fragments of edible plants. It's irrefutable evidence of human presence in South America much earlier than scientists thought possible. In Oregon, at the Paisley Caves, archaeologists found something unexpected: coprolites, that is, fossilized feces, with human DNA dated to 14,300 years ago. Genetic analysis confirmed that this DNA corresponds to haplogroups originating from Asia. Hard to find more direct proof than that. In Pennsylvania, the Meadowcroft Rock Shelter preserves cultural layers that could date back 16,000 years, stone tools and charcoal remains from ancient hearths. Ancient DNA studies from 2018 published in the journal Nature analyzed remains found in Alaska, at the site called Upward Sun River, dated to 11,500 years ago. Scientists identified a completely unknown genetic group, different from all current Native American peoples. They called it Ancient Beringians. This branch went extinct without leaving any known direct descendants. We also have linguistic evidence. The more than 1,000 documented Native American languages show such enormous diversity that linguists estimate at least 15,000 years of separation and evolution were needed to create it. That diversity is, in itself, a fossil of the time that has passed. No one knows exactly when it happened. There wasn't a dramatic moment, there wasn't a first man planting a flag. It was, probably, something as everyday as walking behind a reindeer through a valley that no human had ever traveled before. But at some point between 20 and 15,000 years ago, academic debates continue, a group of humans crossed an invisible threshold. They left the old world behind and entered the new. They didn't know it. They couldn't know it. To them, it was just another valley, another river, another night around the fire. In the thousands of years that followed, the descendants of those first travelers spread across the entire American continent, from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego. They adapted their technology, diet, and social organization to each new ecosystem. They invented agriculture, built pyramids, developed calendars more accurate than the Europeans, and created empires that amazed the world. It all started with a tribe that followed a mammoth eastward, not imagining what awaited them on the other side. The next time you think about the great explorers in history, Columbus, Magellan, the first astronauts, remember that there were others before them. Without compasses, without maps, without radios, without the possibility of turning back. Only with fire in their hands and knowledge in their heads. They opened up the last untouched continent on the planet. They are the real first Americans. And their descendants still walk these lands. If you liked this story, subscribe to the Cave of History. Every week, a new story from the past that the present prefers to forget. See you in the next cave.